All righty. All right, I think we are ready to get started. So again, welcome to those that are just joining us. We are here for our EDU protocols and thinking routines webinar. Just like your last session, this is again being recorded and it will be posted in our Progo course catalog. You are encouraged to keep your camera on, but microphones muted just to help minimizing background noise. And again, if you take a look in the chat, you will see two links as of right now. There is a link to a Google form. That way you can submit any questions or comments that you have. Depending on time, we may be able to address some of those questions or comments at the end of our session. Or if not, part of the Google form will be including your email address so that we can get back to you later today or later this week to answer any of those questions that you may have. There is also a link to our bit.ly so that you can access these slides. Alrighty. So welcome to Increasing Student Engagement Through Thinking Routines and Protocols. My name is Hannah Hudak. I am one of the EdTech coaches here for PALI. I'm also joined by Tony Spitzberg, who is a second Tech and Innovation coach.
Morning, everyone.
And we are going to take a look at today's essential learning. So today, as you've been working through with your sites this morning and during that first webinar, we're really taking a look at how we can leverage data to design and implement high quality instruction that addresses the diverse learning needs of all of our students. And utilizing thinking routines and protocols is going to help with this because they really do promote deeper thinking and student engagement. This is just a follow-up of our schedule today. You had your site time this morning, followed by webinar session number 1, and you are now in webinar session number 2, which will run from 10:50 to 11:30. Now, today we have two main topics. We have our EDU protocols and our thinking routines. So we want to make sure that we see that there is a slight difference between the two. So EDU protocols, those are specifically discussion structures that are designed to, again, increase that student engagement, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, access, and equity. We also have our thinking routines, which are a set of questions or brief sequence of steps that we can use to scaffold and support our students and their thinking. Thinking routines are really created to help deepen students' thinking and make that thinking visible. Again, they have many similarities and they both aim to promote deeper thinking and student engagement, but they do serve a slightly different purpose. The EDU protocols help create routines that help us to organize our classroom activities and streamline student work. They help students practice and internalize content through consistent repetitive activities. So our EDU protocols can be used over and over and over again, but they allow for flexibility in their content. So it could be used for math, it could be used for science, it could be used for ELA, but that way students are becoming familiar with these routines and these protocols, but able to apply them to all different subject areas. Thinking routines, on the other hand, also continue to foster critical thinking, but they really promote that open-ended discussion. So in this case, they're really supporting our students in exploring complex ideas, constructing meaning, and helping them to develop habits where they are always curious. They're always analyzing. Thinking routines help us to encourage different dialogue within our classroom, students taking different perspectives, and helping them to create connections. We're going to start today by sharing a few different protocols with you. Now, you do have access to these slides. So within the slides, you will see that we have different links that you'll be able to access after our session is over. So anytime we have our underlined words here, you'll be able to click those in your version in order to open up some templates, some example videos, and just different resources that could help you when you are going to implement these protocols and thinking routines in your class. So if we take a look, we're going to start with a protocol called Save the Last Word for Me. This is a discussion strategy that students can use after they have, for example, read a chapter or a passage from a text. What this protocol would look like in your classroom is that you would have the students read that passage or protocol and then get into groups of 3 or 4. From there, the students would think about a passage or a word or a phrase from that passage that was important to them. The first student would start just by sharing what that word or phrase was, but they will not give a lot of extra detail. Instead, what will happen is the other students in the group will go around and they will share any thoughts, feelings, wonderings, or questions that they have about that word or phrase that the student originally shared. And then once all of that thinking has been shared, the student that started will get that last word and they will finally be able to share their reasoning for picking that word or phrase. A second protocol that you could use in your classroom is the Frayer model. Now, the Frayer model is a graphic organizer, and it's typically used to help build student vocabulary. However, it can be used in a variety of ways. It can be used for historical context, it can be used for math concepts, writing genres, character traits. I'm going to actually open up a template for you. And you could access right by clicking these elementary examples and templates. Will bring you to this site here where you'll be able to see an elementary example of the Frayer model. But if you scroll down just a bit, we have some templates here on the side linked for you. And so we have some blank templates, but also some examples. So if I open up this first example here, you can see our Frayer model can be used, for example, with physical changes or birds as another topic. And while this setup will stay the same, the categories can change. So for our physical change, we have a definition, non-essential characteristics, examples and non-examples. But with our bird example, you will see we have our essential characteristics versus a definition. But then we still have our non-essential characteristics, examples, and non-examples. So with this Frayer model, you can use that same setup, but the 4 categories that you are having the students explore can change based on the content area. A third protocol that we would like to share, sorry about that, our third protocol, and one of my favorites is the agree disagree ladder. Now, we are actually going to get to try this one out today using a site called WooClap. So I'm going to first show you how to build out this protocol, and then we'll get to try it out. So with this protocol, you would be thinking of a statement that students can either agree or disagree with, and then they would be providing a reason why they agree or disagree. Now, this can be done in person, but one reason I like to use WooClap for this tech tool, is because students would be able to see one another's agreements or disagreements, and then they can agree or disagree, and by hearting which ones resonate with them, which then leads us to be able to have a discussion around the different reasons students are agreeing or disagreeing with a statement. In this example, you can see our statement was, people should always follow the rules, even if they think the rules are unfair. We can see students that agreed with that statement and why, and the students that disagreed with that statement and why. And then we can see some of our students were resonating with certain ones by giving them a heart. So let me show you how you can create one of these agree disagree ladders with your class. What we would do is we would first head to WooClap and we would sign in with Google using our PUSD credentials. And then what you can do is you can create a new event. Once you create an event, it will open up and you will have some options here. But to start, you're going to create a new question. Now, there are so many types of questions you can create on WooClap, but the type that we will need in order to create an agree or disagree ladder, we'll have to scroll down a bit to this brainstorming feature. So I'm going to click brainstorming. And then I'm going to start by putting in my statement. What is the statement that I want the students to agree or disagree with? And today you will have this example. Classes should always walk in lines around campus. This is a statement you could use with your students. We're going to put on the hat of a student today and pretend we are students and think, would they agree with this and why? Or disagree and why? So our categories will be agree or disagree. We do not need a third category. And we do want to be over here on this right-hand side, we do want to turn on that feature of liking answers. This way, students can go ahead and put hearts next to the statements or to the opinions that their classmates have that they resonate with. What you'll see now in the chat is a link to a Woo Clap. I'm going to click display so that it pops up. Once you click the link, this is what you will see on your screens. So this is what your students would see. You would share this Woo Clap link with them. And then what you're going to do on your end is you're going to decide, do you agree classes should always walk in lines around campus? Or do you disagree? And then you'll type in a reason why. After that, you'll be able to start hearting others' opinions that you resonate with. So go ahead and take a moment, clicking on that Woo Clap link in the chat, deciding if you agree or disagree with this statement and why. So we have one agreeing, walking in lines helps to get everyone to their destination safely. Thank you for that opinion. We'll give us a few more seconds to get a couple more either agrees or disagrees there. And then once those populate, you can begin hearting ones that you agree with or disagree with. Lots of agreeing. Walking in line keeps everyone safe, keeps us quiet in the hallways. Routines and expectations. We have someone agreeing that when they're walking, they should help keeps our campus quiet, allows many people to walk in the hall at once. It's more organized and allows for multiple classes to walk in the hall at the same time. And then we also have a disagree here. Walking in lines is for younger kids. Older kids shouldn't have to walk in a line all the time. And so now you can have an idea here and you can see how this would work in your classroom as students are putting in what they agree or disagree with, and then able to go ahead and give those hearts. And so afterwards, what you can do is you can take a look, you can keep this displayed on your board, and you can have a talk about which agree statements got the most feedback and hearts and kind of start those with your discussion. And then looking on the disagree side and seeing which statements got the most hearts, and those can lead your discussion based on your original statement. All right. Let's go ahead back to our original slides. Okay, our fourth protocol here is our convince me that. Now, convince that can be used, again, in a variety of different subject areas, but with this protocol, you are helping the students having to convince you that an answer is correct. So in this case, rather than giving the students the question or the problem first, you are actually going to give them the answer. And then their job is for them to convince you that that answer is true, that that answer is correct. So this could be used for reading comprehension. They may need to convince you that the main character of a story made the right decision. This could be used in science, convincing you that plants need sunlight to grow. It could even be used to help with classroom decisions. Convince me that our class should have a celebration this week. We could also use this using other tech tools. So if we have access to our VR headsets that you can use if you are partnering with one of us as an ed tech coach, we could actually have us, for example, one we've done with our classes before is we've had students visit the Grand Canyon using the VR headsets. And then using the information that they are observing and seeing through the VR headset, they had to be able to convince us that the Grand Canyon was not man-made. And our final protocol that we're going to be sharing with you today is called Number Mania. So, this protocol can be used with students creating infographics about facts that they have been learning about in a variety of different subjects. So, they could create an infographic to describe themselves, but they could also use it after reading a story or learning about a historical event. One that I would like to share with you is based on a fourth grade benchmark Unit 7 lesson where the students are reading about the Transcontinental Railroad. After reading about the Transcontinental Railroad, they could create an infographic that shares all of the important numbers related to the Transcontinental Railroad. And it could look something like this. Our Transcontinental Railroad, we had, again, all of this information is coming right from our benchmark unit. But some of the key numbers that stood out to me after reading this story and may stand out to your students is there are 30,000 workers that helped construct the railroad. The railroad was completed 7 years early. The railroad cost approximately $60 million. The railroad was completed on May 10th, 1869. 10 miles of track was laid on April 28th, 1869. And finally, the railroad was 1,776 miles long. So this would be an example of students creating that infographic based on their benchmark stories, really highlighting the numbers from within that story or that historical context. All right. Now, if you have these slides open, you will see I'm going to stay out of presentation mode just for a moment, that we do have even a few more protocols here that we've hidden just for time today, but you are more than welcome to explore those protocols. We have Iron Chef, Four Corners, and Cyber Sandwich. And I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so that Tony can take over to share some thinking routines with you.
Right, let me just go into presentation mode here. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Hannah. So now the next few selections are going to be thinking routines. And as Hannah pointed out, there are thinking routines hidden in this deck as well. And I'm going to show you how to access them on Project Zero's website. So the first thinking routine that I'm going to discuss is tug of war. Tug of war is a really great thinking routine when students tend to gravitate toward an issue's sides, and they tend to view an issue as only being two-sided. And so what happens is the teacher might take a rope, maybe they have a rope in the garage or a piece of yarn like I had when I did this routine recently, and the teacher would write the pro on one side and the con or the for or against on the other sides. And a student group might have post-it notes. So the group then approaches the rope and begins the tug of war by placing arguments on both sides of the rope. They don't necessarily have to be on a side. Their objective is to simply fill in the rope with all of the arguments for and against. And once they have filled those in, they can collaborate to figure out which arguments are the strongest. And just like in a tug of war, they take the strongest sides and they put them on the ends. And one of the great things about this routine is not only do students get exposure to all of the different perspectives, but they also see the perspectives of classmates, which might deepen and inform their own perspectives. And then ultimately, supports their critical thinking because they recognize that what may have appeared initially to be only black and white is now a whole spectrum of color. The next thinking routine that I'm talking about here is CSI, color symbol image. And what color symbol image does is that it inspires students in a fun and creative, nonverbal way to basically get to the essence of something that they've watched or something that they've read or listened to by coming up with a color that represents what they've explored. And then they come up with a symbol and then they come up with an image. And then once they've decided on their color, symbol, or image, and this can be done individually or in groups, that's when they present it to the class. And so they're presenting what they chose and the reasons behind it. And it really helps the class to sort of recognize common themes that classmates are coming across and the unique and creative ways that they've chosen to represent those themes. Think Puzzle Explore is an excellent thinking routine to use at the very beginning of exploring a topic or routine. The first thing that a teacher might do with a class to initiate Think Puzzle Explore is let them know what the topic of study is going to be or introduce the unit, and then have the students write all that they think that they know or that they know. Maybe they're unsure about it, but they would write all of those on a whiteboard, or once again, they could use post-it notes to put everything that they're thinking about that topic. The next segment would be after they've reviewed everything that they're thinking about it, what starts to puzzle them? What questions do they have? What gaps are there in their knowledge? What do they still not know and want to explore? So obviously this is supporting deep inquiry. So now they're taking their Post-its and they're putting a bunch of questions on the Post-it notes, putting it under the puzzle segment of the whiteboard. And then they're going to brainstorm how to explore because at this point their curiosity's peaked and they really want answers. And so now it's about coming up with a means of exploring those answers. And it's a great assessment tool for teachers because initially with the think part, a teacher can get a sense of where misconceptions might lie and what their prior knowledge is. And a teacher could also use the puzzle segment to sort of guide instruction by seeing what it is that a class um, might be puzzled by. And then a teacher can take a look at the explore segment and get a sense of how well students understand the resources at their disposal. So for example, in a class that's learning about community, maybe they recognize that there are different players within the community, whether it be a city council or a mayor, and maybe they're a bit puzzled by what the mayor does, and they're not quite sure what a city council talks about. So those might be two examples of questions that they post. And then as far as exploration is concerned, maybe their ideas are going to a city council, meeting some community helpers, drawing out a map. So once again, really helps to launch a unit, and now students' interest should truly be piqued. Oops,
This is the
playing the
third.
video. 3-2-1 bridge that's another thinking routine that is a little bit like Think Puzzle Explore, except it's typically done at the beginning of a learning segment and then at the end. And students write 3 things that they think and 2 questions that they have, and then a metaphor or a simile. Then once they've explored the topic, they do the 3-2-1 again, but the bridge is represented by the comparison between the 3-2-1 that they had at the beginning and the 3-2-1 that they had at the end. So obviously well, not obviously, but ultimately what they do is explore how their thinking has grown from the initial 3-2-1 to the final one. Now, there are some suggestions that we've come across for implementing thinking routines in your classroom. I think it's really important that teachers try 3 to 5 thinking routines with students, just like exercising one's body and getting stronger. The more they practice the same thinking routines for a given period of time, the deeper the thought tends to be. The other one is that teachers look at thinking routines and present them to students not as activities necessarily, but tools. So for example, we're going to use our tug-of-war thinking routine to address this issue because it appears to be only two-sided, but we're going to use tug-of-war to really iron out what's in the middle. Also, a thinking routine should be returned to so that students can see all of the thoughts that they shared at the beginning and they can recognize and identify all the ways that their thinking has changed through a course of study. And then keeping in mind that examining the student work can really give you a great idea of whether or not the students are presenting the kind of thinking that you were interested in inspiring. And it also works as a great way to assess where to go next. And then, as other classrooms are using different thinking routines, it's helpful to go and observe other classrooms' thinking routines as well, because they might have routines that could work really well for your class as well. So as Hannah mentioned, there's lots of EduProtocols, there's lots of thinking routines as well. And the thinking routines can be accessed on Project Zero's website. And they have this cool graphic with different colors here that represent the kind of thinking that you would want your students to do. So once you click on the kind of thinking, you'll then be taken to a page that lists all of the thinking routines that correspond with the kind of thinking you've decided you want your students to do. Then, strangely, it brings up this broad white page without a lot of text, except if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the name of the thinking routine that you've chosen, hyperlinked. And once you click on that link, then you're taken to a summary page, which has lots of tips for implementation and just a general outline of how the routine works. And we have a final thinking routine. This one is called headlines. And the great thing about headlines is that it inspires students to take all that they've learned and all that they've discovered and boil it down to the essence in an eye-catching headline. So in this age, it might be important to review with students what a newspaper headline is or was. But once you've done that, then you can have the students create headlines based on what they've learned. So perhaps they've learned about metamorphosis or life cycle, and then they're concluding that their headline is going to be, butterfly from cocoon to beauty. So with that in mind, we're going to make some headlines ourselves. So in the chat, you're going to create some headlines about EduProtocols and thinking routines. What kind of an eye-catching headline can you come up with that essentially encapsulates what you know about thinking routines and headlines? Brain magic. Nice. Oh, nice. Power moves for your students. It's great. Excellent. Think outside the box. All right, so while we are thinking of some more headlines, I want to take an opportunity to thank everybody. I would say Hannah and I both want to take the opportunity to thank you for joining us today. We have created a 5-point TLC, and that can be accessed on Poway's professional learning site. Hannah, is there anything that you would like to add?
Sure. Again, thank you for joining us today. I did just want to talk a little bit more about that TLC, and then I saw in the chat some questions about just finding brainstorming on the WooClap website. So I can share my screen again and show us how to get there. But for that 5-point TLC, you will just a little bit later this week, once all the recordings are posted, you will pick a few additional recordings to watch from other sessions that you did not get to attend. You will implement some in-class lessons based on those sessions, do a little reflection to get an additional 5 points. But for now, I'm actually going to go back to sharing my screen just for a moment so that I can head back to the WooClap website and show you where I found brainstorming. And then I don't see any questions on our official Google form, but since we do have a little bit of time, if anyone had any in-person questions, we'd be happy to answer those. But let me go ahead back to WooClap for us. Okay, so once I'm in WooClap and I have signed in, I can just sign in with Google and then use my PUSD credentials. Now, when we first go in, again, I have some events created. You would not have any events yet, but I would click Create Event. And then this is going to be what I would share with my students, but I need to put in some questions or types of activities for them to complete. And so I would head over to New Question here. And then within WooClap, you can do multiple choice questions, polls, you can create word clouds, you can do drag and drop activities, fill in the blanks, a number of things. But if you continue to scroll down to that gather feedback section, this is where we would see brainstorming. And then once I click on brainstorming, I would again put in my statement. So that was, for example, where classes should walk in lines in the hallways. And then my categories for an agree, disagree ladder would just be agree, disagree, and then you would not need a third category because we just have those two options. And then we would want to turn on the ability to like, because that is how students can, go back there. Okay, turn on that ability to like so that students can show which statements and opinions they resonate with. And then once you're finally ready for your students to see this question, we will save it. And then the link that you will share with your students, you find right up here in this right-hand corner. So it says participate at. So I would copy. I can click actually this little paper here, right here to copy it. And then I can share that link with my students in any way that you typically share links. So you may post it on Canvas, but whichever way works for you, you can copy that link, post it. And then once you're ready, one thing we have to keep in mind with WooClap is you would share that link with students. But in order for them to see the agree, disagree in this case, or whatever question you're sharing, you have to go into display mode. So on your teacher computer, you would click display. On their computers, they would click that link that you shared with them. And then this way, they can see that what each other is typing with the agree, disagree. You can have it up on the board so that you can have a discussion around it. But that is WooClap. And Carrie, if you are still here, were you able to see that? You can either give thumbs up or thumbs down or.
Scroll down far enough.
Okay, awesome. I'm glad you found it.
I'm going to use the word cloud, I think, because it was my
Oh,
first one.
awesome.
I don't know.
Yes, that is, I think word cloud is one of their most popular features, so it may default to that at first. All right. Any other questions that we can help with now? And if you think of something afterwards, you always can go back to that Google form. It is linked in the slide deck, which you have access to. So if you have any questions after this and you start exploring some of those protocols or thinking routines and something pops up, you can always either send out through the Google form. You can also just send an email directly to either I or Tony. It would be hhudak@PowaUSD. And then
a Spitzberg at PowaUSD.
I'll throw those in the chat just in case. They're in the chat just in case you would like them for any future reference.
There's a really good question in the chat. Sorry. They
Oh,
asked,
yes.
are we able to post links in Seesaw from WooClap?
I have personally not tried that. I posted links before, just not specifically WooClap links in Seesaw. As far as I know, if you took a link, posted it in Seesaw, I believe it would just open them up to a new tab. I would have to definitely try. So Julie, I can try that and get back to you just to confirm. But anytime I've posted links before, I've not had a problem with that in Seesaw. So I can check and I will. I'm just going to write your name down so I can confirm it. And then I'll send you what I find out. All right.
There was one more question, Hannah. Is there a thinking
Oh, yes.
routine TLC?
Oh, thank you.
About that?
I'm not aware of a thinking routine TLC at this moment. That would be a great idea to create one though. But I'm not aware of one that we have currently running. I can take a look and see if we've ever had one in the past that we could potentially restart again if there's some interest in that. But as far as I know, there's not one that's currently available, but I will take a look and see if they've had one in the past before, and if not, talk about maybe getting one created. Looks like Julie is running one, but it is just for her site. So maybe if we don't have one, I could connect with her and see what she's doing, and we could see about getting one for some other sites. Thank you, Julie. All right. Well, thank you so much again for everyone that chose to attend today. You will have access to this recording a little bit later in either today or later this week through that Progo catalog. And then you'll also have access to all of the other sessions that you may not have gotten a chance to attend. And just remembering, if you do choose to watch any of those other sessions and are interested in doing some additional implementation and reflecting, you could get 5 points from our TLC. But thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks a lot, everybody.